Hi everybody, welcome back. My name is Jim, I'm the Lake Effect Gardener. And to start my video today, I'm going to be back here in the living room, just giving you a little tidbit of history here, a little introduction to one of my other antiques that I have here. And this is a 1922 Kurtzman and Company player piano. Now, Kurtzman produced pianos in Buffalo for a very long time. Player pianos have been around since the late 1800s, and it's really the iPod of its time. Essentially, what happens is, how can I explain this? It's an instrument that is played by a person, but it can be played by anybody who has no experience actually playing the piano. This is a fully functional piano, so I could sit here and I can play piano for you manually pressing the keys. But this afforded a lot of people the chance to play the piano without any practical experience whatsoever. This was very popular for people to dance to or just to listen to, and there are just droves and droves of tunes out there that can be utilized here on the player piano. I bought this for $200 on Craigslist, which is a complete steal because it was in absolutely perfect condition. All the vacuum pneumatic system inside was completely restored, so we moved it in here. It cost more to move it than it did to actually purchase it, and it was ready to go. In order to use a player piano, you need to have what are called these piano rolls, and I've got several dozens of them, all different tunes. This particular roll that I'll be playing for you was manufactured by the company QRS, which is also a Buffalo-born company. And essentially what happens is you take this paper roll out and you fit it on the player portion of it. And across here, I don't know if you can see it, but there are 88 holes, okay, going across. And this represents the 88 keys of the piano. And a vacuum is created by pumping two little pedals down here. Once the vacuum is created, the roll will move on its own. And then what happens is every time you get a punched hole, you see all the punched holes in them? Every time a punched hole goes over one of the holes on the tracker bar, it releases the vacuum that's being created, and essentially that release forces the key to play by itself. So anybody and everybody can play a player piano. And I've had lots of parties here. This is always something that's really fun for people who have no experience playing piano. It's also fun for my musician friends who actually, who are accomplished musicians. They'll just sit here and play for hours on end, and they think it's a complete hoot. So this particular roll is a piano piece by Zez Comfrey, and the song is called Kitten on the Keys. I'm just going to do a little bit of this because this is not exactly what this video is all about, but I thought it would be a fun little tidbit. Everything is controlled here. There's the tempo, etc., etc. Now, I have to just make sure. Okay, and the tempo on there says 85, so I'm going to move the tempo lever to 85. All right, and here we go. Start pumping. No hands. Okay? Fun for all ages. I mean, this piano is going to be 100 years old next year, and it still works like a troop. They do not make things like this anymore. Anyways, that is not what this video was about, but I thought it'd be kind of fun to show you anyways. This video is going to be taking place in the kitchen. And since today is Fat Tuesday, or Shrove Tuesday for those who are across the pond, a very traditional thing that we do here in America, and I'm sure it's done everywhere, you know, is we make a certain baked good. And I know I absolutely adore this time of year just from the baked goods alone. The baked good that I'm going to be doing, to all my music friends, you'll know this melody. And as a music teacher, I've probably played that melody about 9 million times. For those who aren't familiar, we're going to head into the kitchen and make some hot cross buns. We're back here in the cottage kitchen now, and I'm going to be introducing this recipe to you. Before I do that, you know, from my last video showing you making the fire in my fireplace, the player piano, the tours and stuff like that, obviously you know that I have a very strong draw and affinity for the antiques. I love antiques. I love the craftsmanship, the beauty of it. And it's not something that came late in life. I've been surrounded by these types of pieces my whole life. Now, not everything in there is stuff that I've inherited. I have some pieces in there that I have gotten from family members who I absolutely treasure them. But a lot of the stuff that I have, I've either purchased or have found on the curbside and, you know, refinished and things like that. One of the things that is extremely significant in the way of antiques and that have been passed down to me are my recipes. And I've got not a large amount of them, but I do have a decent amount of recipes that were given to me, that were left to me out of the estate of my great aunt. And I'm sure you guys have heard me talk about my Aunt Jo plenty of times. She is really my inspiration for this channel. She is the woman who taught me everything, for the most part, when it comes to home and hearth and being self-sufficient and things like that. She had a very big impact in my life, and I'm happy to share her recipe for hot cross buns. The best part about this recipe is that I have the original recipe card, and although it's just a 3x5 card that has a little bit of, you know, handwriting on it, it's her handwriting. And this was the recipe card that I used as a child. So, like I said, it's just a 3x5 card, but this is something, this little piece of paper is something I treasure dearly. I also can see that she was a very meticulous woman and very clean and very, I was not growing up. I was a train wreck. So I'm looking at all of the spots and tears in this, and I'm totally pointing the finger of blame at me. Never mind. So I'm going to put the recipe up right now. To all my friends over across the pond or in other areas of the world who use the metric system for measuring, I apologize in advance, because here in the States we still use all of the old-fashioned cups, teaspoons, tablespoons, and whatnot. I wouldn't even know where to begin with the metric, but I'm sure most of you will have the will and the knowledge to convert all of these into grams and liters and milliliters and centimeters and things like that. So, so here's the recipe for you. Aunt Jo's hot cross buns. You will need the following: 1/4 cup granulated sugar, 1/4 cup brown sugar, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1/3 cup butter softened, 1 cup evaporated milk, 1 cup boiling water, 2 packets or 4½ teaspoons of active dry yeast, 6½ cups of flour depending on dough consistency, 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, 1 teaspoon grated nutmeg, ½ teaspoon of cloves, 1 cup of raisins or currants or cranberries, make sure that you soak them, 2 eggs. So the first thing that you absolutely have to do is make sure that you preheat your oven. And this recipe calls for a 400-degree oven, that's Fahrenheit. If you are doing Celsius, I just Googled it and it said 204.4444 centigrade. So I don't know, it's maybe just a 200 oven for you guys over across the pond. So anyways, my own oven here does not have a pilot. It doesn't have electronic ignition, anything like that. I have to light it myself. So setting the thermostat to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm going to turn on the gas. That's how I roll here. So now let's go over to the mixer and we're going to throw everything together. So we're over here by the bread mixer. I have everything pretty much measured out as it needs to be. I don't have the flour measured out and I don't have the boiling water measured out, but I do have everything else taken care of. Things are combined. So this is my 1/4 cup of granulated or caster sugar. I do have the teaspoon of salt in with that. My 1/4 cup of brown sugar. These are the spices, the cinnamon, cloves, and nutmeg. Here is my yeast that I'll be using, and I use a package. I don't buy them by the packet per se. I buy a huge container of active dry yeast. I just think it performs better. This does not need to be proofed. Okay, some yeast recipes will require you to proof your yeast in warm water and a little bit of sugar. This doesn't have to be proofed in any way. I've got my 2 eggs here. I've got my cup of evaporated milk, and I've got my cup of raisins, which I have soaked in hot water. And I've heard of people soaking it in hot tea as well. Frankly, I would rather be drinking it than soaking raisins in it, but that's just me. So what we're going to do is we're going to start throwing things in my lovely KitchenAid mixer. So I'm just going to move you over a little bit. Sorry, the lighting is not great in here. So the first thing it says is into the large bowl, put the brown and white sugar, okay? And this, like I said, has the salt in it. That's completely fine. All right, add the milk. All right, and then it asks you to add the boiling water, which I have over here, and that's also a cup. This isn't awkward. Okay. Put the kettle back on the stove. All right. Stir until the butter. I haven't even mentioned the butter yet. Cooking videos are not easy, my friends. Okay. I need to add the 1/3 cup of butter. Here's the butter. Okay, and it says that 1/3 cup is 5 1/3 tablespoons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 1/3. So I'm just going to put that here, put that in. Okay. Then it says to stir until the butter is very soft. I'm just going to put the hook on it and let the hook do its thing. The hot water is going to make the butter melt down nicely. It doesn't have to be completely melted, because once you start adding the dry ingredients like the flour, etc., it will be incorporated into the mixture. Okay, then it says sprinkle yeast over liquid, and then it says let stand for 5 minutes. I don't need to do that with this yeast. Okay, and then it says add about 2 cups of flour and mix. All right, and this is a 2-cup scoop. It also says to add the 2 eggs. So I'm going to throw them right in there. And and give it a mix. Now, it's funny reading this recipe. My aunt did everything the old-fashioned way, with a bowl and a spoon. She didn't have a mixer on hand. She did. It wasn't really meant for breads and things like that. So everything says, you know, beat with a spoon and do this with a spoon and that with a spoon. I think it's kind of funny. Okay. Then what I'm going to do now, we've got a little bit of incorporation happen here. I'm going to add my spices. I want to make sure that those are well distributed in this mixture here. Okay, so the batter is slightly, let me grab a spatula. The batter is slightly thickening, okay, but I'm always scraping down the side of the bowl here to make sure that anything that sticks on the side gets incorporated. And it's kind of goopy right now if you look at it. Kind of ugly, but that's okay. As we add flour, the consistency will become more dough-like. Okay, so like I said, the recipe called for 6.5 cups of flour. I'm going to be putting in another 2, and then I'm just going to kind of see how things are coming together. Okay, making sure that everything is secure so I don't have another mishap. So, as you can see, it's really beginning to form a very, very wet and what looks like a very sticky dough. This is great. This is the point in time in which you would add your raisins or currants or cranberries or whatever dried fruit, or maybe even nuts if that's your thing. That would be the time to do it. So that's what we're going to do next. All right. I made sure to really drain these raisins well. If there's a little bit of moisture on them, that's totally fine. Any extra moisture that's been put inside of the dough can be mitigated by adding a little bit more flour. So, okay, so I have scraped down the bowl. Now, this is, you know, when people say that baking is an exact science, I tend to disagree to some point, only because I feel like environment has a lot to do, especially when you're dealing with yeast. The environment that you are currently in makes a huge difference. I like the dough to be ever so slightly sticky. I don't like a stiff dough. It is a little bit more difficult to work with. I agree, a sticky dough, but I feel like you've got a better rise. I feel like the crumb is a lot more chewy. So for that, I'm going to, this is the last 2 cups. But I'm not going to put all of it in. I'm going to put about half of it in, and I'm just going to see exactly where it is at after it's fully mixed. It could be because it's so incredibly dry and cold here that could be just enough, in which case we would have 5 cups of flour. I'll probably need to add more though. So let's see how this goes. Okay, so this has been mixing for a couple of minutes. You can still see, I mean, there's sticky dough and then there's this. This is almost still like a batter, so I obviously need to add more flour, so I'm just going to do that. I'm going to add maybe another 1/4 cup, see how that goes. Again, I mean, it's sticky. I'm not really sticking to the dough itself, but I think I'm just going to go ahead and put the rest of this in, which would make it a total of 6 cups of flour. There's still a lot of moisture on the bottom that still hasn't been brought up by the hook, so I'm not terribly concerned that this is going to dry out at all. So let's see how it goes. Oh boy. Yep, more snow, more snow. Can't get enough of snow here. I did clean off my car earlier today. Oh well. Okay. So I've had this kneading on the hook for a while. And let's see, this is just the 6 cups of flour. So it is a little bit sticky, but you know what? It's really coming off the sides when I go to grab it. So I'm gonna go ahead with this, okay? And like I said, people might be gasping in fear thinking, oh, what is he doing? It's too sticky. But as you can see, even though there's a little stuck to the bottom, I'll get that. But as I'm handling it, it's sticky to the touch, but it's forming itself into a nice ball. So this is actually really, really good. This is good stuff right here. I'm gonna stick with this. So at this point, the dough has had a minute to rest. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna scrape it all out of the bowl and make sure that I get every sweet, precious little morsel of that dough. I'm gonna kind of bring it together here on the surface, and then what you'll do is you'll form it into a ball and you'll put it inside of a greased bowl. I've got this wonderful old piece of stoneware, which is perfect for bread raising because it's really deep, it's got really, really tall sides. This is my rule of thumb. You don't need to take this for gospel, but some people, when they grease this, they'll use a nonstick spray. Some people will use vegetable shortening. What I tend to do is whatever the recipe calls for in the way of fat, that is what I will use to grease my bowl. So this bread, these rolls, required butter, so that's what I used to grease this, is butter. Okay, like I said, it's totally your choice. I'm just kind of weird like that. So I'm gonna turn this dough out here. Okay, I'm gonna make sure that I get every single bit. It really feels like it's the perfect consistency. Let's hope it is. And I know I don't have to say this to you either, but I'll say it anyways for the sake of the video. Always clean as you go. Makes your life so much more enjoyable. Okay, so I'm just gonna give this a quick turn here. Quick knead, and you can see can you hear how sticky it is? Okay, but it's not sticking to anything, which is lovely. Okay. This is great. Now I had this mixing for a while. I really wanted the gluten to form well. Okay, so when I feel like it's a really, really good spongy consistency, it kind of bounces back on you, form it into a ball, and then you're gonna put it in your bowl and turn it about so that all the sides are covered with the butter. Okay, I'm gonna cover this up now with some plastic wrap and a towel, and then we're gonna let this rise. The recipe says for 2 hours. I think because it is a bit of a stickier dough, it probably won't need that. You just need it to be double in bulk, okay? So we're gonna do that now. When we come back, hopefully we'll have our first rise. I'll show you what that looks like, and then we'll go from there. Okay, time to take a peek and see how our dough is doing. It has been approximately about 1 hour and 15 minutes. So I'm just gonna uncover this, I should say. Look at that. So again, it didn't take very long as I suspected, and I really believe it's because the moisture content inside the dough, was greater than what the recipe was calling for. So as with any dough, when you get a nice double bulk like this, the next thing you want to do is take out your inner aggression and give it a punch, okay? Punch it down. All right, coming off the sides nicely. Feels good. All right, so I'm just gonna move this out of the way. If you've noticed, over here, I have a 9x13 glass. This is Anchor Hawking, nice American-made glassware. This is a 9x13 pan, and I have thoroughly buttered it, okay? Want to make sure that there's plenty of fat on it so that these buns don't stick. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is just give this a bit of a knead, just a little bit, bring it back together. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to form this into kind of a long cylinder, I guess you would call it. Some people will roll it out flat and then roll it up that way. I couldn't be bothered, truthfully. You just want to make sure that what you have here is relatively even. Okay, and I want to fit 12 buns inside of this pan. So I'll just do some simple math. We're going to split it in half with the knife, or what's close to being half with the knife. Okay, that looks about right to me. Okay. And then I'm going to split these again. All right. Then I'm going to, again, roll these a little bit smaller. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide this into 3 parts. Okay, and I'm basically just eyeing it, folks. There isn't any exact science to this. Once you have the bun section cut, then what you're going to do is you're just going to roll it and tuck until you form a nice little ball. Okay, just like that. I'm going to do that 12 times or 11 more times, and then I'll show you what they look like when they're in the pan. So here are a dozen almost the same size rolls, and there are 12 of them. And if you notice that I've purposely left gaps here, I used a big enough pan and I keep them separated because I now have to send them back to their shady, warm habitat so that they can go for a second rise. And I'm going to cover it again with plastic wrap and with a towel, and I'm going to let it do its thing for about an hour and a half, probably one more time, before I put them in the oven. Now my oven's already preheated, it's looking lovely. So that's what we'll do next. Let's cover these babies up. Okay, it's been about an hour, hour and 10 minutes since I covered these up. So let's take a look at what they look like now. Oh, perfect. Perfect. These are really the perfect size. Now you can see they've done a little bit of rising and they've just barely met each other. Okay, so they're just barely touching each other. That's perfect. These will rise. These will continue to rise in the oven a little bit more. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tent this with aluminum foil, just to prevent the tops from getting too brown too fast. I'll pull the foil off of it maybe, I don't know, 10 minutes before they're done baking, just to lightly brown the top of them. That's just personal preference. I don't like a terribly well done sweet bun of any kind, so that's what I'm going to do. Also, disclaimer, I also want to point out to you that I'm thinking because of how wet the dough was and how little flour I did put in, I didn't say little, but there was about a half a cup of flour that was left out of this recipe. I did turn my oven down about 25 degrees, so it's now at 375. I think it would be better for these buns. If they have to stay in a little bit longer, so be it, but I think that's gonna produce a really, really nice looking bun. Okay, the recipe calls for, let's see, bake for 25 minutes. So I'm going to take my handy dandy mid-century space age Presto egg timer, and I'm going to set it for about 20 minutes first, and then I'm going to take a look at them after that and pull the tenting off of it. All right, moment of truth. And I will be utilizing my Aunt Jo's hot pads, which I knitted these little covers for. Very appropriate. Oh yes. Wow, they came out beautifully. Look at that, perfectly browned, not too brown on the top, just the way I like them. Aren't they gorgeous? All right, now I'm going to give you an interesting quick tip. So these are fresh out of the oven, and what happens immediately when you take buns like this out of the oven is that the tops will tend to start to get a little bit on the hard side. In order to prevent that from happening, this is a little tip I picked up along the way. You butter the top of the buns, okay? I'm not sure about the science behind it, okay? But all I know is once you have buttered the top of these buns, that moisture, I don't know if it's the moisture of the butter, kind of sinks in and makes these buns super, super soft and moist and delicious. And, I mean, it's butter. It's gonna make them taste all that better. Okay, ooh, this thing keeps going around. Now, don't be shy with the butter. Okay, you have to do this right out of the oven. If you try doing this after they've cooled a bit, you're not gonna have the same effect. It's not gonna quite be the same. Okay. Beautiful. All right. There is one last step, but this step cannot be done until the buns are completely cooled, and that is giving the each bun its quintessential and very necessary cross made from confectioner's sugar frosting. So we're gonna let this cool. I've already lost the light outside. This has really been a whole day event. So we're gonna let these cool down, and then I'm gonna quickly show you how I do that. It's completely dark outside now, so I apologize for the light in advance because it did get really dim in here. So we are at the last leg of the journey, and that is the icing crosses on top of the buns. So they're amply cooled now, almost kind of room temperature to the touch. That's perfect. You do not want to have warm buns, as the sugar, when it's incorporated and put on top of the buns, will melt, okay? We don't want that to happen, although I'm sure they would still taste delicious. What you need for this is quite simple, 3 ingredients. Confectioner's sugar, also known as 10x sugar, also known as icing sugar. You need milk, and you need vanilla extract. So again, I don't really have a recipe for this, but I've done it so many times that it's a consistency thing for me. So I'm just gonna take some of the sugar. I don't know, it looks like a couple of cups. And I'm putting them in a bowl. Then I'm going to add my vanilla extract. And a little of this goes a long way, so I'm just the tiniest little splash. Nothing substantial. And then if you've never worked with this type of sugar before in making frosting, a little moisture will go a long way. You don't want to add a ton of moisture to this because then it becomes really soupy. And for this in particular, I don't want it to be terribly soupy. I want it to have a little bit of firmness to it so that the shape of the cross, the stripes that will be going across the top of the bun, will be consistent and kind of stay put. Okay, so I'm going to take my milk here. And just add a little bit. Now, if you happen to go overboard on the milk, it's not a big deal. You could always just add more sugar to it. Not a problem. But then you get into this really bad cycle of adding sugar, then adding milk, then adding sugar, then, and then you have all of this frosting that you have no idea what to do with. So then you end up eating it by the spoonful, which is not unheard of in this house. Okay, so it melts down quickly, and I just spilled it everywhere. Probably should use a bigger bowl. Okay. It's still a little on the firm side, so I'm going to add just a smidgen more milk. There we go. Make sure that you mix it thoroughly. You don't want any lumps. Okay, this looks pretty good, actually, if I do say so myself. Okay, so it feels really firm to the touch, but it's actually a little bit, I don't know what you call it, syrupy. You can see how thick it is by how slowly it falls off the spoon. Okay? Then what you do, if you're bougie like me and you have this piping bag fit with a ribbon tip. Okay, it's just that little tiny slot. Okay, if I weren't doing a video, to tell you the truth, I would literally just take the spoon and, you know, I would genuflect every single bun. But as this is official content on the channel, I want to be a little bit more professional. So, easy way to fill up a pastry bag like this is get yourself a pint glass, fit your bag over it, and that way you're not glopping everything around. Okay, so we'll just empty the contents of the bowl in the piping bag. Easy peasy, nice and clean. Okay, let's get the rest of this off. And this is an homage to my great aunt, who would always say every time she would put her hands into something, "Don't worry, honey, my hands have been in water all day." And my hands have really been in water all day. So there we have it. Okay, piping bag is filled. Lift it out. And now it's a lot simpler than you think. I'm not going to individually cross these buns. I'm literally going to be doing long bars straight across. And then when you take the bun out of the pan, it looks like it has a cross on top. Isn't that nice? Okay. I'm going to stand up for this because I can be a total klutz. And actually, you know what? I'm going to, as a rule, you should always move your work. You should never try to overexert yourself. Okay, so here we go. So I'm just going to do straight line. Going across the first row. Second row. And the third row. All right. See what that looks like. All right, now I'm going to do the smaller rows. I'm going to go, woo! That was a close one. All right. There's one. There's two. There's three. And there's four. And what you are left with are hot cross buns at long, long last. So I'm going to tuck into one of these. Now, I made these purposely to bring over to my parents' house tomorrow, but I think they'll understand if I just take one out to try it, just to show you what it looks like and to give it the old taste test. I made myself a cup of nettle tea to go with it because it is getting late. I know it kind of looks like maybe the sun is back out again, but I honestly had to move a lamp in here from the other room because it was so incredibly dark. So I'm going to cut in and see how they turned out. Okay, so the bun quite easily came out of the pan because it was well buttered. Just get a nice little look at that. Oh yes. All right. There's just no dainty way to do this, so cheers. It's so incredibly soft. It's like a cloud. And it's perfectly sweetened. It's not too sweet. I'm not a fan of things that are way too sweet. The spice, the cinnamon and the clove and the nutmeg is there. It's not overpowering at all. It's just kind of there. Oh. Oh my gosh. I think I need to just stop filming myself for a minute and just inhale the rest of this. Okay, I won't. So, this was my first cooking/baking video. To tell you the truth, it wasn't my first. I actually did quite a bit for Thanksgiving and then nothing came out, nothing worked. So, never mind. I really hope you enjoyed this. I know I said in my last video that my next video would have been about planting seeds, but I thought this would be a wonderful opportunity to show you guys that I'm always talking about, you know, how I'm doing stuff in the kitchen and I love to bake and I love to cook and stuff like that. Just so you know, it's not a complete farce. So I actually do quite a bit and I enjoy doing it. Hope you enjoyed this content though. Otherwise, I will be doing a seed video in the next couple of days for sure. I'm just getting everything prepared for it, making sure that I have everything that I need before I start filming. So please let me know if you liked this. If you are interested in seeing more of something like this, please comment below. If you're new to the channel, hello, welcome. Thank you for showing up. This is a very eclectic channel. I hope that you enjoyed what you saw. Please consider subscribing, pressing the notification bell, thumbs up, whatever you can do. That would be great. And I will see you guys all really, really soon for a brand new edition of the Lake Effect Garden. So long.